President Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he expects a significant de-escalation in the conflict in Gaza. He had expressed support for a ceasefire earlier this week. More than 225 Palestinians have been killed since the violence began more than a week ago, including 64 children. At least 12 people were killed in Israel. CBS News foreign correspondent Holly Williams is in Tel Aviv.
Palestinian anger exploded onto the street in Ramallah, but the clashes, as always, were unequal.
The Palestinians have been throwing stones, and the Israeli soldiers, who were about 300 yards away on that hillside, have been shooting tear gas canisters and live fire.
It was mainly young men hurling rocks, but other protesters were middle-class families, children and white-collar workers, people like Maysoon Ali, who told us she's a banker.
Their lives is not worth more than our lives. It doesn't worth more than our kids.
And you're saying peace talks don't work?
No. 25 years, what did they give us?
4 Palestinians were reported killed, and Israel claims 2 soldiers were shot in the leg, though we saw no guns on the Palestinian side. Palestinian frustration is what fuels Hamas, a group considered a terrorist organisation by the US. It's fired more than 3,000 rockets at Israel since last week, killing 2 civilians yesterday. In retaliation, the tiny, poverty-stricken Gaza Strip has been shattered with blistering Israeli airstrikes. Israel says it's targeting militants. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country's enemies are learning a lesson. But Susie Ishkontana is just 7 years old. She was pulled from the rubble after an Israeli strike, losing her mother and 4 siblings. Some of the more than 60 children killed by the Israeli bombardment, according to Palestinian officials.
Hamas has told CBS News that one of its conditions for a ceasefire is that Israeli soldiers never again set foot in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Those who know this part of the world will tell you that is highly unlikely. Holly Williams, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
For more on this, I want to bring in Shadi Hamid. He's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution's Center for Middle East Policy. Shadi, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. Hamas has launched a barrage of rockets at Israel, which continues to respond with airstrikes. What do you think it will take for this cycle to stop?
So when it comes down to it, someone has to stop first, because they're not going to stop at exactly the same time. And that's what makes it somewhat challenging, because each side wants to claim victory. Each side is trying to avoid the perception that they're standing down or backing down from a fight. And that's why you have this kind of cycle of escalation that's very hard to de-escalate. Now, I mean, one option is that Israel decides to take the first step and institute, for example, a 24-hour humanitarian pause, and they can frame that in a kind of humanitarian sense where it's about helping Gazans have some time to get access to medical care, to safe water, so on and so forth. But ultimately, the only way this stops is through a ceasefire. And, you know, as we saw earlier, Biden is talking about a ceasefire or a de-escalation, as he calls it. But then we see Netanyahu very shortly thereafter coming out and saying, well, hey, we Israelis are determined to continue this until our aims are met. Now, the question here is, what exactly are Israel's aims and how long will they take to meet? That's ultimately something that we don't know right now.
Well, some rockets are reportedly being launched now from Lebanon. Is that the work of Hamas, and could that expand the conflict even more?
So initially, there was some speculation that it could be Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group that was behind those rockets that were coming from Lebanon. But Hezbollah has denied it, and it seems now that Israeli analysts are saying that it's most likely Palestinian factions in Lebanon who are trying to basically express solidarity. And this has happened various points in the previous years, so it's not unprecedented. And these are these rockets, a couple of them fell into the sea others into open field. So this is a less sophisticated rocket operation than what we're seeing from Hamas in Gaza.
And Shadi, what do you make of the White House's messaging on the conflict versus what you're hearing from Prime Minister Netanyahu? And do you think President Biden can secure a promise of significant de-escalation that he's asking for?
Well, I think one frustration that I think some of us who have been following this have had is that, the U.S. hasn't really done a whole lot. Biden seems to be adopting a kind of minimalistic approach. He doesn't want to be too engaged. And we saw last week that he said on Thursday that he hasn't seen a significant overreaction on the part of Israelis. So he's been very careful not to criticize the Israelis. And instead, what they're trying to promote is quote unquote, quiet, intensive diplomacy. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, well, to what extent is this quiet diplomacy producing results? And that's why I think there are a lot of international calls on the Biden administration to kind of step in and take a more forceful approach. Up until today, Biden has not explicitly called for an immediate ceasefire. Even if you look at his comments earlier today from the readout with Benjamin Netanyahu, the wording is really interesting. Biden is calling for a de-escalation on the path to a ceasefire. So even the language here is worth parsing, and it goes to show that still there seems to be some reluctance on the part of the Biden team to really go in and put pressure on their Israeli counterparts. And at some point, that's probably what will be necessary because obviously the U.S. is Israel's closest ally. The U.S. is the country that has the most leverage on Prime Minister Netanyahu. So if the U.S. isn't going to put pressure, it's not clear who will.
And Shadi, what are some of the risks for the United States in engaging more fully if it were to go ahead and do so, as you're suggesting it may be forced to do, given the mounting pressure?
Well, I think some of the risks from the Biden administration standpoint is that they're worried about angering Netanyahu. They're worried about, and also Biden is someone we should note who has a history of being, let's say, on the more pro-Israel side of the Democratic Party, and now we're seeing some internal divisions among Democrats, where you have some from the more progressive wing who are actually getting out ahead of the White House on this, and that's not just the so-called squad of AOC and Ilhan Omar, but also more mainstream Democrats like Congressman Gregory Meeks, who's the head of the who's ahead on foreign affairs. And he even talked earlier this week about even potentially delaying a White House sale of missiles to Israel. He backed down from that afterwards, but even the fact that he would mention that as a possibility shows that there is this kind of tension. But so far, Biden seems to have his own particular approach and isn't really bending to that internal pressure from his progressive wing. And, I think some of it is about Biden's own kind of personal attachment to Israel, that he's spoken passionately about that in the past. And also, again, this belief that quiet diplomacy behind the scenes with Netanyahu is a better way to get Israel to agree to a ceasefire than calling them out publicly. That is their theory of the case. But, we'll have to see if that is actually effective.
And Shadi, just getting some broader context here, how does this violence that we are seeing now compare to Israeli-Palestinian conflicts that we have seen in the past?
So the last war happened in 2014. It went for about 51 days. And the death toll was considerably high. It was about 2,200 killed, 1,500 of them civilians. So the majority were civilians. And I think what's concerning about that precedent is that if we go back 7 years, there was actually some promise for a ceasefire in week 2 of the conflict. But then it kept on going for several weeks thereafter. So this is a very critical moment where there is a risk that this can keep on dragging on. I mean, right now, the death toll in Gaza is at least 220. About a quarter of them are children. So, I mean, we're talking about a significant death toll already, and it will only get worse, obviously. So let's hope that it doesn't last for 51 days the way it did last time.
Absolutely. Shadi Hamid for us. Shadi, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.